could we be given warning at the beginning of a programme if there's going to be anything about the Beatles, as all Beatle fans can make sure to listen, and have a chance to ring up other fans to make sure they are also listening.
Hi everybody, this is John here. This is Paul, George,
and Ringo.
And we're very happy to be on your program once again.
Welcome to our latest Beatles News Briefs podcast, hosted by veteran Beatles reporter Steve Marinucci. On this show, we do a deep discussion on the new John Lennon Power to the People box set that features remixed live tracks from the one-to-one concert and new remixes of some tracks, but not all, from the Sometime in New York City album. In our first segment, longtime friend of the show Candy Leonard talks about what was happening with John Lennon and Yoko Ono when the Sometime in New York City music was first released, and we analyze the reasoning for the omissions from the box set that have been debated by fans online. In segment 2, Steve talks with Gary Van Scyoc, the bassist for the Elephant's Memory Band, both on the Sometime in New York City album and the live tracks from the one-to-one concert. Gary talks about what it was like recording and performing with John and Yoko, about their performances on television, including the Mike Douglas and Dick Cavett shows, and also reveals what's coming in archival releases from the Lennon estate. Finally, Steve will give his own review of the box set and also report some Beatles news. So let's get started.
Hi everybody, this is Steve Marinucci and we have a full show. So here we go.
I am talking to someone that you have heard on this podcast before many times, my good friend Candy Leonard, author of the best titled Beatle book called Beatleness. And Candy, it's great to talk to you again. Hello.
Hi, nice to be here.
We're here to talk about the new box set, the John Lennon Power to the People, that was just released. And both of us have been listening to it. There were a lot of things going on for them at that time.
Lennon had just moved to New York, which he thought was the center of the universe. He would say, like in ancient times, the place to be would have been Rome. And in the early 70s, he wanted to be in New York. He saw that was where the action is. And immediately upon moving, fell in with the left, the ragtag left, the yippies. And, but of course, the context is important, too. The Vietnam War was still going on. Nixon was not particularly well liked by the young people, anti-war protesters, and certainly not by the left. And so it was an exciting time. And so I think that he saw it as kind of a new beginning, but yet a beginning that would allow him it gave him an opportunity to use his platform. I mean, we didn't use the word platform then, but nor did we use the word influencer, but he was an influencer with a platform for sure. And, I think he felt a responsibility to use it in the interest of peace, which of course had been their thing for a few years, well, for a long time, but certainly active. They were peace activists since, let's say 68, 69. It was a new way to be a peace activist. And not only peace in terms of Vietnam, but also just justice and, other left causes.
And it wasn't just him, it was both him and Yoko. And
of course, yes.
She played a very integral part of that whole thing, not just with him on record. I mean, she was doing her art thing. She wrote songs. Some of the songs on the Sometime in New York City are hers, and they performed them in concert, which is also part of that box set.
Right. And of course, she also turned John Lennon into a genuine feminist over their years together. And so that her feminism is reflected in a lot of the songs that she wrote. And
that's actually an interesting point, because when he was married to Cynthia, he was different. I mean, he did not regard really Cynthia as an equal, where with Yoko, that was Yoko's personality.
When I look at the analytics of my website, one of the things that people seem to look at the most is a piece I wrote called John Lennon, A Voice for Feminism. And, making the point, sort of what you were alluding to, that when he was, not only was he with Cynthia, who was a different kind of woman than Yoko, obviously. I'm not judging that. I'm just saying,
Right.
everybody's from their time and place,
Mhm.
But he didn't consider her an equal. That, he was in the traditional Northern male mode of how one sees one's wife. Yoko, as a result of being with Yoko and respecting her and listening to her and being somebody who is open-minded and open to new ideas as he was, she really did, I believe, genuinely raise his consciousness about feminism and, to use the phrase that he has used, the other half of the sky. In other words, he seemed to genuinely come to believe that it was foolish for humanity to squander the intelligence and energy and creativity of half the population of the world. And so I think he really did evolve in a genuine way and did develop a genuine feminist consciousness, which I don't know that he would have had he not been with Yoko.
I was fortunate to talk to her in person. She definitely felt very equal to him. And, there was no getting around the fact when you talked to her that they were equals. And that was one thing that I took away from talking to her the first time. My first interview was really kind of interesting because she admitted that she surfed the internet. It was quite an interesting conversation. And they also had the immigration thing going on.
Right.
And that was really tough for them. That was a big thing that hung over them for quite a while until,
I remember that. And
yeah.
also, it was because of his wanting to protect her when they originally were busted. It was the reason, wasn't that, am I remembering this incorrect?
He took all the responsibility for the drugs, and he made sure that they didn't have anything to hang on her, and they did not charge her. They dismissed the charges against her.
Right. But he was charged, which was the excuse given for not allowing him to easily become a citizen. Yeah.
Right. And they
I
went,
remember that press con. I was living in New York at the time. It's funny, I always think back. I grew up in New York, so I was still a kid, I like to say, at that time. I remember when that, sort of followed their life in New York as a fan. I always wonder why I never went down to Bank Street or the Dakota. It did never occur to me to try to do that, which I very much regret now, because I'm sure I would have been able to run into them had I tried. I remember that whole period, their whole New York period, but the joy that they felt finally getting citizenship, I remember that. And I remember, as I'm thinking back on it, as sort of like feeling happy for him, but also a certain pride in the fact that he had become a New Yorker, like, because I was in New York, that he loved this country so much and wanted to be a citizen and live here. It kind of can't help but wonder what he would think about what's going on now.
There were actually people that tried to spread the idea that he was turning conservative. And I remember that came up while I was writing for the Examiner, and I wrote a blistering article saying, absolutely not. There's no way. And I think I even asked a few people that were close to him at the time, and they said, never in a million years would he have done that. And I can't imagine, especially being with Yoko, that would have happened. And Yoko is still, she's real quiet now. She's still posting her wisdom, and she's still doing the light in Iceland, the peace light. So
right. It is hard to believe that, he would have changed his politics. It is kind of hard to believe, but it's not impossible. People, yeah, I agree. It doesn't seem likely given how deeply, and it also goes back to his Irish roots. I don't see his politics having changed, that they would have changed.
So anyway,
But he
Well,
was in the thick of it there, with Abby and Jerry, and wisely, I think of course, he knew he was on Nixon's enemies list, and he knew he was being followed and wiretapped and all that.
there was a real paranoia. Do you remember anything like that?
In 1972, I was 16. The only paranoia was about getting caught with pot. That was certainly something we were concerned about. I don't remember personally political paranoia, but I did understand my parents were lefties. In fact, my mother was called before the House Un-American Activities Committee, not because of her own activity, but
Mm,
because of people that she knew.
really?
Yeah, so, grew up in an atmosphere, I think one of the reasons why my parents embraced the Beatles, I mean, I talk about this a little bit in the preface to Beatleness, is that my parents were rebels and, sort of countercultural in their own way. So the Beatles were like, fine, it's okay if me and my brother like the Beatles. But yeah,
Was
so
that McCarthy they testified in front of?
yeah. So, and so I was certainly aware of government overreach and things like that. And as I say, I sort of grew up in what was sort of in effect a countercultural household, but I didn't personally feel, that I was going to be arrested or anything for any political
Right.
activity of any kind. But, watching John and Yoko's activity, I thought it was great. I always thought it was great. And that week on Mike Douglas, I watched every single one of them. And so it was 5 days, it was like 4:30 in the afternoon or something. And the Mike Douglas show, I mean, you couldn't get more mainstream or, I don't want to say conservative, but more mainstream than that.
My
And
mother was my mother was a huge fan of Mike Douglas. She watched him every day. Every
right. I
single
mean,
day.
our parents' generation were really more tuned into that than we were more likely to be watching nighttime TV, whatever, or Dick Cavett or what have you.
Right.
But yeah, so they had a very large megaphone. I mean, as the Beatles
Hmm.
did, and then the two of them did also. I mean, they became, they were the dynamic duo.
And all of this really affected their music. Sometime in New York City was a very political record, and it really kind of suffered because it was. You do you think?
You mean sales-wise?
Right. And critically, I've seen comments online that, say that they don't think the box set's going to do very well because Sometime in New York City was not well liked. It's always been kind of pushed aside. I mean, in terms of, Lennon's works, everybody loves Imagine, everybody loves Mind Games. A lot of people did not like Sometime in New York City.
Well, do you think that it was not liked because the music, musically or songwriting wise, it wasn't up to a certain standard, or because they didn't want him dabbling in politics, or both?
That's a good question. I think musically, after listening to some of the audio outtakes and some of the live tracks on the new box set, there's some great music there. New York City is a wonderful song. I love New York City. The live version in the set is just fantastic.
Yeah, the
It's
horns on are great on a lot of that stuff. Of course, the song that does not appear on the box set, which we should talk about for a moment anyway, Woman is the Nigger of the World, has just an amazing, amazing horn section, amazing. I mean, as a song, it's so powerful and so sonically energizing and rousing, but the decision was made to exclude it from this box set, which I maintain was wrong. I mean, I understand where it's coming from, and I also understand that maybe it's not for me, a white lady, an old white baby boomer Beatle fan, to
right.
opine on this. I get that. But if it really gets to what is the purpose of releasing this box set. Financial interests aside for a moment, if part of the impetus to do this, particularly maybe on Sean's part, was to preserve his parents' legacy, then to omit that song is really an insult to their legacy, because it is one of the most important songs they did together, if not the most, I would say. And it's still a very important song, I think, and the message is still, more important than ever. And, I always refer people to that Dick Cavett episode where they sang it, but before even going on to sing it, they were talking to Dick Cavett about it. And you could see his genuine enthusiasm for his new understanding of women and male-female relationships. And there's something really beautiful and childlike and true in the way he talked about it that's so delightful and genuine. And so to omit that song, I think, is really a mistake. I don't know who they think the market is for this box set or how big they think the market is for this set, but anybody who's going to spend a couple $100 on this thing is a hardcore fan, right? And they want that song on it, right?
Right.
So,
Yeah, and there's been a lot of complaints, a lot of criticism against Sean for leaving it off. I'd forgotten about them performing it on Dick Cavett, but it's too bad. And I was thinking back when you were talking about that, Rhino put out a multi-tape box set of the whole week, and it's too bad that they didn't do that again.
Of the video, I'm like picturing myself back in my bedroom. It was the same setup where I was watching the Watergate hearings a little bit later on, but like I'm on this little black and white TV, and I remember thinking like that it was sort of out of place for them to be on Mike Douglas in some way. Like, how weird, like John and Yoko on Mike Douglas. But there was also something really validating, and it added to their stature, I think, their importance.
When Daytime Revolution came out, I did a review on it for the podcast, and I happen to have a copy of Mike Douglas's book, and he's got a whole chapter on that week, and he says some good things, he says some critical things. He criticized Yoko. He said Yoko was a little demanding, but he was very glad to do that week, and he also said that they got a lot of ratings, and they kind of expected the ratings, and that may have been the reason that he did that, because of the ratings.
Well, I just want to backtrack to Yoko being demanding and just put a little bit of a caveat that when women request anything, they're often seen as demanding.
Right.
She was being excessively requesting things. We don't know.
You're absolutely right. Everybody seemed to criticize her.
Yeah.
I have some theories, and I'm not particularly happy of what those theories are.
The most recent book about Yoko,
Yeah, I think it's
David Sheff, yeah, is really good. I recommend it.
Madeline Beccaro's book is really good too.
What is she now? 94, 95 years old? She's not going to be around much longer, let's face it.
And she's not in New York anymore. So they moved her to the farm that they have upstate.
But getting back to 43 years ago, it was a very exciting time. People who were engaged in anti-war politics or felt that they were part of the counterculture. And even though the Beatles had broken up, there was John in New York and John and Yoko talking about things that were important and still relevant. One of the things I think I talk about in the book is when the voting age was lowered to 18 in 1972. I mean, I think that the youth movement and the demand for something like that was certainly, the energy and the influence that they had on a generation was certainly, I think, part of that.
That was my first election.
Right. And so Nixon's concern about them going to Miami and causing trouble, let's leave the causing trouble piece out. Even if they had gone to Miami without any threat of violence or riot, whatever, Nixon was correct in his belief that Lennon could influence politics. He was absolutely correct.
But we should add there, or just for history's sake, for people that aren't aware, they were going to Miami because the Republican convention was there.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So then, when John and Yoko wisely realized that there could be violence and that Jerry Rubin and Abby Hoffman might have been, if not advocating it, certainly not disavowing it, that's when they decided they didn't want to be involved. And I think that speaks well of them.
I want to get back to when we were talking about the removal of Woman is the Nigger of the World on the box set. Sean he had originally, or a couple of weeks ago, posted kind of a hint that it wasn't his decision. But he's now given an interview to Mojo magazine. I'm going to read just a little of this, just a couple of paragraphs. It says, in 2025, its cancellation will prompt criticism to the effect that the Lennon estate are rewriting history, but it's hard to see another path the reissue's production team could have taken. I'm not sure I agree with that, but removing it, Sean tells Mojo, was hard because it wasn't just something that I decided personally. It's something that everyone was advising. No one wanted to put it out. Lennon's use of the N-word was designed to shock a world that took the subjugation of women for granted. And in 2025, it was always going to be difficult to justify or allow to stand. Quote, I think it's a really important song, adds Sean, but times have changed and I'm not going to bring any more negativity to my parents than I have to, unquote. I'm not sure I agree, number one, with the writer's tone, and number two, with the quote.
Well, if you read between the lines, it sounds like he was kind of, it's almost like he was pressured into it and then rationalized it.
He has to rationalize it anyway, for the sake of interviews.
Now, Sean saying being aware of the sensitivity, the different era that we're in now and not wanting to bring negativity. All right, I suppose that he wants to put the controversy to rest with that. But again, if you think about who cares about this thing, right? I did another interview where we were talking about this. It's like a tree falling on a desert island. How many people are going to know or care about this? And anybody who cares, who buys this, is going to be somebody who would probably prefer that the song is there, right? So the idea of this could bring negativity to my parents, as he put it, it's a little bit of a cop-out, I think. It's a little bit of like a little bit of wiggling out of it,
Which is not surprising in an interview anyway, especially for something like this. He pretty much has to say what he has to say.
And let's not forget that, they did anticipate criticism. They did do it to shock. And of course, in some ways, it'll be more shocking now than it was then, but it was shocking then too. But if you watch the clip on Dick Cavett, he shows how the Black community that he had, he had contacts in the Black community, including Senator Ron Dellums, who was the head of the Black Caucus at the time, was very much on board and said, there's nothing wrong with this if you define, in other words, it was not seen as racist, which is the bottom line here, is it seen as racist? And it wasn't at the time by Black people. How it would be seen today, I don't know, but it's not, I don't know. I mean, who are we to say, I don't know. In a way, it's a big tempest in a teapot, because how many people, how many units is this thing going to move, right? Like, I mean, I don't know.
I don't either. I mean, yeah, I think the attraction will be the live material pretty much. And actually, this drama is going to continue next year when they put out the film. They're doing a film of the whole concert next year. The documentary, the one-to-one John and Yoko, did not have the whole concert. It was basically a documentary about the background of the concert.
I thought it was excellent.
I was looking with the title one-to-one, I figured it was going to be more a concert film.
Well, it was misnomered. I mean, they should have called it like John and Yoko, like something about.
Well, it should have been called Willowbrook, because that's basically what the end of the film was all about. It was all about Willowbrook. And that end of the film was spectacular. I mean, the showing the Geraldo report and showing the terrible conditions those children lived under, and then doing the concert and showing that the kids were at the concert.
Yeah,
That
no, it was
part,
great.
but there were a lot of distractions in it too. I mean, the stupid commercials that they kept sticking in there. I mean, once would have been fine, but they kept doing it and doing it and doing it. I really was disappointed in the film. I thought it could have been much more focused, and that was my problem with it. But next year when they put out the concert, are they going to leave the song out again?
Probably. If the same people are the decision makers are involved, then they probably will leave it out. Of course, Imagine was considered an extremely important song, and Yoko did finally get her credit for that. But with the possible exception of Imagine, one could argue that it's the most important post-Beatles thing he did.
Well, let's talk about that for a second, because there's the lyric in Imagine there's no heaven. Now, can you imagine, not, I didn't mean to use that pun, but what if there wasn't any criticism from the religious people out there about Imagine there's no heaven?
Well, it's a funny thing about Imagine because it has been, used in so many places, which is nice. I don't object to it being used. I think it's fine. And it was when the Olympics and were in the UK, it was a big,
Right,
it's used at very important moments.
right.
If some of the people who are saying, let's use Imagine, really stopped and listened to the words, they may not like it so much. Like
Right.
in other words, if you kind of the bird's eye view of it, it's easy to sign on to its message. But if you break it down and look closely, like as you were suggesting, it's anti-religion, and then of course he was mocked for it too because of, a wealthy person talking about having no possessions and all that. It's aspirational, like so much about the Beatles was aspirational, right? And yeah, I mean I'm glad that people know that song, it's a good.
A lot of his writing was that way. I mean, that's the way he wrote. I mean, he did that with the Beatles, even. That's what a songwriter basically does: take words and make pictures out of them.
Right.
Maybe the song would have gotten through without any problems. I mean, maybe even a year ago would the song have gotten through without any problems. I mean, considering the atmosphere we're living in now versus the atmosphere we were living in a year ago. I don't know.
I don't know. I would say probably since 2000, people have become, since George Floyd, it's become perhaps a little bit more of a hotter issue.
Yeah.
And, even if there had been a minutia of backlash, it would be easily addressed under the name of artistic integrity, historical context. I don't know. And again, I mean, who would object? Obviously, there are millions of Black Beatle fans, but like, are the people who would buy this set going to be people who would complain? No. Black, white, or green? No, they wouldn't be. So I don't know. The song survives. I mean, it's still available, in other places. When this
Right. And
controversy first broke, I wanted to hear the song because I hadn't heard it for a while. And I went to Spotify, which is how I listen to music these days. And I was wondering for a minute, maybe it wasn't even going to be there,
so was I.
removed, but like it is there in its original context.
And I've asked people in Universal, and I've been told it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
At least
it's a very powerful message. It's still a very, very powerful message.
Yeah, and it's too bad that we don't have that. So, it's going to stay on the regular album CD that has been out there forever.
Yeah. I think Sean's statement is a little word salady, frankly. I don't know.
Yeah, it's the same kind of public relations that celebrities do when they're promoting things. And they say what they have been told to say or what they need to say. And even if history doesn't go along with it, it is too bad.
Right. So
But
this,
on the other hand, the mixes are great. It sounds wonderful. If you get the box, you get a big book with it.
does the book make mention of the song at all? As far as this concern about offending people, which is ultimately why they left it off, they could have put an explanatory sticker. They could have written a paragraph explaining why it was included. Or conversely, the fact that they didn't include it, maybe they should have included a paragraph about why they didn't.
It is mentioned on page 78. They have a photograph of the cover, and there it is right there.
But there's no discussion of the song.
The lyrics are all there,
That's good.
but there's no explanation in it.
John Lennon becoming a feminist is a really, really important part of his legacy that I believe has not been given its due, whatever that means. He wouldn't like the fact that the song isn't there.
And by the way, there are several live appearances on here, and none of the live appearances have the song.
Oh, it's not gone.
It's not, yeah, it hasn't been eliminated everywhere. You can still hear it on Spotify.
So it's an interest, just in terms of subsequent generations. I mean, if somebody was doing a deep dive into John Lennon's post-Beatles career, I suppose this might be of interest to them or whatever. They keep putting these things out. They keep finding new things to put out. How much interest is there still? I don't know.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see where the sales figures go or if it shows up on any charts next week.
Well, that's what I was wondering. So it came out last week, right?
It's still in the process. The release was a couple of days ago, and it's still in the process of getting to people.
Right.
Like
I
said,
can't
Walmart.
imagine it's going to sell a huge amount because even people of our generation who might be inclined to buy it maybe are tired of spending money on Beatle content. You know what I mean?
Maybe.
I don't know.
Or they have the anthology set coming.
Right, right.
And they actually changed that because originally the 4 anthologies were only going to be able to be bought together. But they actually changed that now, and they have made the 4th anthology available separately, even though they're all going to be remixed. They've done that
because people objected to that, right? There was pushback. Yeah. So that's coming out in November.
Yeah. Well, if you think about it, John and Yoko have done, I mean, there's been so many things that they have put out in the last year and a half, 2 years. There's the film of the Toronto Rock and Roll Festival.
Right.
Which I thought was really good.
That live piece in Toronto is one of my favorites.
Yes, I got that for Christmas when it came out with the calendar.
Calendar and all.
Calendar and all. But the film itself is great. There's a lot of footage that hadn't been seen before. There's the telephone conversations that John had. That I thought that was really, really good. And then Daytime Revolution came out, and that was really good. I liked that a lot. And now this, and then the next year, the film. I mean, they've been really packing the shelves.
All this stuff out there before we all die.
Right. Well, they're not going to get all the Beatles stuff out, that's for sure.
There's a lot more Beatles stuff.
Everybody would like to see all the rest of the Beatles albums done.
Well, Rubber Soul should certainly get the Giles Martin treatment. For sure.
And then Walls and Bridges is going to get the special treatment that Mind Games and Imagine got. And that makes, perfect sense. So who knows where we're going to go from here. There's a lot to put out. The thing is, like you say, that, those of us that have been around since the beginning are getting old. Not all of us are going to be around when, and that makes me mad that, I may not be around to see With the Beatles or Meet the Beatles or whatever the deluxe set they do for that. At least they put out the CDs, but unless you are a bootleg fan, you're probably not going to hear the outtakes,
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
It's too bad.
Well, yeah, other thing that's next year is the 4 films that are coming out
That's
about
another thing.
each of them, but I think that will do a lot, just as the anthology 4 when it's on TV, Apple, when it's on Disney rather.
Oh, there's another. Yeah.
And that's next month. So there's the anthology that's going to be streamed on Disney, which will, just as the original anthology, kind of stimulated old fans and cultivated new fans. And I think that this quartet of movies that are coming out will also do that.
The question is whether or not, or how soon they'll put it out on DVD.
The anthology, yeah.
Right. The streaming starts on November 26th.
It's
Anthology.
over Thanksgiving, right?
Okay. Yeah.
They want it to be family viewing after the turkey is put away.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, it's nice. Of course, having it on a premium channel is not necessarily it's not ideal.
Well, and especially one that a lot of people just canceled.
Exactly. There's probably enough stuff in the vault that they could keep things coming for a very long time.
And they have, people that will buy it. I mean, there are lots of young people out there that are, there's a young audience that will stay with the Beatles, which is always wonderful. I recently was talking about that with somebody else, and I said, it's really wonderful that there are young people that love the Beatles. And I mean, it always makes me very happy to see younger people wearing Beatle clothing.
Every time I see somebody with a Beatles t-shirt, especially, I always say, "Oh, I like your shirt."
I've done that too.
Yeah, it's nice. They're not going anywhere,
Nope.
They're not going anywhere.
No, I mean,
there continue to be books about them that find an angle,
speaking of which,
serious or playful.
What would be a good project would be go to different countries and see how Beatlemania affected, different countries.
Yes, that would be another thing. Oh, the other big news I have, my Beatleness has come out in Thai.
Oh, really?
Okay. There is a Thai. Now, this is so weird because I always thought that there would be a market for a Spanish and a German edition of my book.
And there isn't one?
They never bothered, no. But this guy who runs a publishing company in Thailand contacted me, and then I put them in touch with my one thing led to another. So I don't have it in my hands yet, but you can see it online. It's so weird, like, to see it. So yes, there's interest in Thailand, clearly, in the Beatles, in early Beatles. So yeah, maybe maybe a focus could be to look at it more internationally.
Are you going to do a sequel to Beatleness?
Well, I think about writing another book. I don't know whether it would be a sequel to Beatleness, but I would say this: anything I write will have some Beatles in it, because even if I wrote a memoir, which is something I also think about doing, it would certainly have the Beatles in it. Or if I wrote a collection of essays, which is something I also think about,
and you've written a lot of essays.
It would have Beatles in it. Even though Beatleness is now 11 years old, I like to think of it not as old, but as a classic, because it's not dated. Like, nobody else can do it. It reads as if you're in the present moment of those times. It's not selling like hotcakes, but it still sells now. People still buy it, people still read it. If I were to write another book, I don't want to just add to the noise. Like, I would want it to be something that I felt was as important or as worth doing. Because, as you know, writing a book is hard. It's a lot of work, and it affects your whole lifestyle while you're working on it. It's very solitary. It's very sedentary, sitting a lot. The short answer is, I guess I don't know, but I do think about it. And I will also say that every time I think I have nothing else to say about the Beatles, I get into a conversation with somebody, and whether it's you or Robert Rodriguez or Christine Philman Barrett or young people, whatever, like, oh, I do have more to say. So I don't know, but people should read Beatleness if they haven't yet.
Yes, that's absolutely true. Has there ever been talk of a movie version?
I have thought about Beatleness, a documentary. I have thought of that many times. showing, to really make clear, to show again the impact at the both personal and generational and cultural level. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a documentary filmmaker. I haven't pursued it. Obviously, very open to it. I was actually thrilled to be thanked in the credits of the Scorsese movie, Beatles 64.
Oh, okay. You might. Very
I
good.
them to McLuhan and to the clip of Betty Friedan talking about the long-haired boys. At first, I didn't know why they thanked me, and then because I mean, Debbie Gendler told me, "Hey, you're thanked in the credits." I said, "Oh, okay." I'm not sure why, but then I realized that it was because one of the team had contacted me, but she didn't say it was a Scorsese film. She just said a film, and they were looking for contemporaneous commentary about the Beatles in those early days. And so I knew about this clip of Betty Friedan talking about how the long-haired boys and what they represent and all that. So that's included in the thing.
In the
And
movie.
also McLuhan had talked about the Beatles early on, recognizing, the whole global, how they tied into his concept of the global village and all that. So anyway, but I would love my book to be a documentary. But more than that, I would like every once in a while there'll be like a celebrity or somebody say, "Oh, that person would love my book," and I think, "Oh, how would I get it to them?" And so it's just hard to do, like, because you can't just like send a book to a celebrity. Like, it's hard to do that.
Know that has the book.
Well, my daughter had some connection to Jackson Brown. She asked me to send him one, so he might have it. But no, I'm sad to say I mean, my big fantasy, of course, is Ken Burns. I was so audacious when I was writing it. I actually tried to get a forward from him, and I heard back from his company. They were very, very nice. And of course, he's churning out wonderful products, his histories, but we know he's a huge Beatles fan. He wore that haircut for years.
Right.
But that's my fantasy, is for Ken Burns to use my book as a kind of skeleton for something. I don't know. I mean,
I'll cross my fingers for you.
And I actually sent a bunch up there for his team. Yeah, he has offices in New Hampshire. He's headquartered in New Hampshire. And I sent a bunch of, they have the book.
They have the book. That's good. Diane Keaton would have probably loved it.
I was very moved by her passing. She was an original. She was really unique. It's funny you asked me about the book. I think of it as my third child. And I would like to see it in another language besides English and Thai. I think there could be a Spanish and German, maybe. What do you think?
Yeah, Spanish and German. I mean, Italian. There's another,
Possibly Japanese.
I'm going to end it here. Candy, it's been great to talk to you again.
Always.
You and I have had such great times talking about the Beatles on the show.
Yes,
I want to thank you, and we need to do it more often, just for fun.
Anytime. Just when I think I have nothing else to say about the Beatles, I realize that there's more to say.
There seems to be always more to say.
Yeah.
Thank you again, everybody. There's a little more to come, so stay tuned.
Next up, we're really pleased to have Gary Van Scyoc, who is the bassist in the Elephants Memory Band with John and Yoko. He'll talk about the box set. He'll talk about playing and recording with John and Yoko. And he'll also give us a little look into what the Lennon estate may have coming in the future. Here's Gary Van Scyoc.
I'd like to welcome Gary Van Scyoc. Gary, did I pronounce your name right?
Yes, you did. Thank you.
I'd like to welcome Gary Van Scyoc, and we're here to talk about the new John Lennon Yoko Ono box set. Power to the people.
Good days.
Nice to see you too. It has been a long wait for this stuff to come out. I mean, we were talking about this, I can't remember how many years ago, and it's finally here. I can imagine you must be really glad that's finally out. But given what, the controversy, the discussion that has gone on over the last few weeks, how do you feel about everything now that it's out?
Well, first, I'm extremely happy that this is finally out. We got a little tease a couple years back. I got a couple phone calls from some writers that I've crossed paths with in the past, and they said, "Oh, well, I guess it's going to be coming out this year," and that was almost 2.5 years ago.
I remember it longer than that. I mean, we've been talking about this for quite a while, and there had been discussion that Yoko was working on it, and obviously now it's not Yoko, it's Sean, but finally it happened. And I will say, it sounds great. I have been listening to both ends of it. I listened to, actually, Spotify just put up the first disc of the Evolution mixes this morning of sometime in New York City.
Oh, I didn't know.
Yeah, they put up the live stuff earlier in the week. I think it was earlier in the week. And then they put up the first disc of the Evolution mixes this morning. And those sound great. And I know there was some discussion. People were saying, why did they take the saxophone off of New York City? But I think I love that song. And I think that it sounds great with the remixed version and all that.
I think if you remix something, you may as well do it as you see as fit. I mean, you're starting from scratch with the basic tracks being transferred. Just go for it and follow your heart. There's a couple of things besides that the sax is. One, for instance, is the intro to Sunday Bloody Sunday. The sax is gone.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the way that the vocal hits on that now. I think it's a lot more impactful.
Wow. Let's get this question out of the way now, because I know, I have to ask it. Like I said, with all the controversy and the fact that they left Women as the Nigger of the World off, how do you feel about that?
I wish it were there, but I understand it totally. I mean, after speaking with Sean and Simon Hilton, that it was a real dilemma. I mean, I didn't want to go another. I like the fact that I'm alive and I'm able to.
Yeah.
I think
yeah.
that's especially significant to me.
You did talk with Sean about this.
Oh, yeah. It's just a matter of, I'm just thankful that we have such, as you mentioned, great mixes of all the other stuff and a whole ton of stuff that I never even imagined would be included in this. So much.
You're talking about the live stuff? I mean, I was surprised at all the live stuff they put in there.
Oh, yeah. Simon even had to call me and ask me details because they had to give me writing credit. I never imagined in a million years. I couldn't understand what he was talking about. So now that I've heard it, there's a couple of tracks on the jams. One called, I think it's called Jazz Freakout. He gave credit to everybody in the band for that. That's so nice of them to do that. And I think there was another one in there somewhere. There's so much stuff. Honestly, Steve, I haven't even had a chance to listen to everything yet. I'm trying to take a couple of things and wade through it. I was at the special screening at Dolby in New York this past, I think it was last Thursday or something like that.
Yeah, I heard about that.
I had one in LA too.
Oh, see, I didn't hear about that one.
Jim Keltner was on the discussion Q&A after the one in LA. I've been wanting to get together with Jim for years, and that would have been nice if we would have been on the same panel for a change. I'd love to be able to talk to him. He is absolutely one of my favorite. He's in my top 5, Jim Keltner. I've worked with so many greats, along with Denny Sywell and Steve Holley, of course. I've got a short list that's just killer. I've been so fortunate to cross paths with so many great, phenomenal drummers.
Who's still around from the band?
Only Adam Ippolito, the keyboardist, and I are the only 2 remaining.
Okay.
Of the original 5, which we call the Lennon Band. They had many, many configurations through the years. They started way back in 1965, I believe. So they were together for a long time before I even joined the band.
Mm-hmm.
Coincidentally, when John was doing the show at the Garden. He came to me one day and he says, I want to have two of everything. I want to have two keyboards, two guitars, and I'd like to try two bass players. And he said, I'm going to invite Noel Redding to do the bass parts at the Garden. And I just like, wow, that's a bummer. I wasn't really into hearing that because I figured if, nobody's going to pay any attention to the Elephant's Memory guy if Noel Redding's there. So, but it didn't work out. It lasted a couple of days and Noel backed out for whatever reason. And I said to John, what would really be cool if you would ask the Elephant's Memory bass player that I replaced in the band just a year ago. His name was John Ward. And I really honestly don't know whether he's living or not. But he was the other bassist on the Madison Square Garden performance.
One thing that box set does is it really shows how great you guys were. And I think a lot of that, because of the album, because of the political content of the album, the album has always been hasn't gotten as much credit as it should. But I think one of the things that the box set does is it really lifts Sometime in New York City up quite a bit. And you guys were great. Studio tracks that are on there are just wonderful. They really are,
Yeah, a lot of people to thank for that. We were prepared. Elephants were all studio musicians. Quite to the contrary of what I just read in Rolling Stone, we weren't a greasy bar band. And I take exception to that. I won't name any names, but you guys can figure it out. We had a wonderful opportunity to have a lot of experience going in. It could have went the other way. I can think of several other bands in New York if he would have asked. I don't think it would have turned out quite as good as it did. Where would you find a sax player like Stan Bronstein?
Right. He was great. He was fantastic. He
was Bobby Keys and then some. John had checked us all out. We had a great percussionist as a drummer, Rick Frank, and Adam Ippolito has played on so many records. Adam played on with Kool and the Gang and played on Celebration, one of their biggest.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. That's
the Joffrey Ballet. I could go on and on and on. Adam's career has just been phenomenal. I'm very fortunate to work with all of them. And of course, Tex Gabriel, the guitar player, was with Mitch Ryder and the Detroit Wheels before he signed on with the Elephants. So a lot of pedigree there from all of us. Adam and I had been on a band on Columbia Records called Pig Iron.
I remember seeing that.
Yeah, I think the album cover won the award for the album cover of the year in '69. The Elephants had a gold record before I was in the band for the Midnight Cowboy soundtrack.
Okay.
Academy Award movie with Dustin Hoffman. Come on. When I went to audition for the Elephants, I saw that gold record on the wall and I went, hey, now we're talking. I was fortunate enough to get the gig. I think they had a cattle call of like 60 bass players. There were some good guys in there as well. But I think they had done their homework. They had spotted Adam and I as previously being on Columbia with the Pig Iron Band. They kind of knew who we were before we came down to the audition, I think.
So was all this getting the band together, was this for John or was this before John?
We hooked on in December of '71. And I band early in '71, replacing John Ward, who I mentioned. And so we had done quite a few political benefits, gigs in the New York and all over, really, because they had a booking agency and were going out on weekends to do tours. We were quite active in '71, but we never realized what was going to happen when we got the call that John had heard our tape. We didn't know he would be coming down almost in a few days afterwards, but we knew they had been checking us out. That's all we knew, just right before Christmas there in '71.
How did you find out he was checking you out?
I think that Jerry Rubin, the political activist who was our friend and had been at a lot of these rallies that we were doing at NYU and Columbia and such, he had passed them the tape. So he had told us that, hey, I gave John your tape. And I said, wow, that's pretty cool, because actually the tape he gave him was pretty good sounding. It wasn't like a It was a cassette. Everything was almost in those days, but
Right.
had been recorded in 7.5 speed at a radio station, LIR, in Long Island, New York. So it was pretty good quality.
Wow. So John, you hear that John is interested in you. When did you first meet up with him?
It was only a few days later until I heard the drummer, Rick Frank, may have known a little earlier that I don't think he wanted to tell us really, because I think he thought we would be too nervous if the J would come down. He didn't want to have us all crazy before they walked in the door. So I think he knew the day before, but he didn't let on to us. And it was at a studio called Magna Graphics in Greenwich Village. It was shortly before Christmas. The roadies came in. I thought I could tell by the look on the roadie's face that something was up. And that John and Yoko are out in the lobby and they want to come in and play. And to be honest, at first I thought they were kidding, because we would do a lot of pranks like that. They would come in with some tale about somebody wanting to come in and jam. And a lot of times it was true. But I didn't really take them seriously. But this one was true. They cleared the door, and John had that white suit on from Abbey Road, and my knees just buckled. I mean, we were just looking at each other going, holy moly.
How was he to work with? How long did it take, or when did you guys decide to go? When did you all decide to get together? Was it right away, or?
Well, I guess you'd say right away. It was that night.
Was it?
We had played for 3 or 4 hours. I mean, our fingers were sore. We just couldn't play anymore. We were doing all those rock and roll songs like Dizzy Miss Lizzy and just everything we could think of besides Beatles songs. We didn't do any Beatles songs the first night. Old rock and roll stuff, 2 or 3 things that I guess would have been on the rock and roll album that he later did. Songs that he loved from childhood. I mean, Elvis tunes, and we actually did Hound Dog at the Garden later on.
That's not the stuff that's on the box. This is before that, right?
Oh yeah, this is just the jam for the night that we met.
Did you tape it?
No, I wish I had. Because we were right in a recording studio. It would have been so easy. But I think everybody was just so flustered and taken back by what was going on. Even the owner of the studio, Bob Pruitt, was running around like a chicken with his head cut off. He couldn't do enough for us or John. He was being great, because I think he actually canceled some time after us because going so long, and that's unheard of for a studio.
Right.
But about 4 a.m, Steve, we were tired of playing, and just they popped up with the question, like, we would like to join your band. And we just looked at each other and, holy crap, this just can't be happening. I mean, it's like a dream come true, But there were a lot of serious things to talk about. One was that we had a record deal, and we were signed right at that moment with Metro Media Records, and had just released a single called Skyscraper Commando, and it had only been out maybe 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
And we had found out the day before, which is kind of funny, that the FCC had banned our record because we used the word dope.
Yeah.
But later, the radio stations would refuse to play the song you mentioned earlier because of that word. And so we were quite aware of what could happen with this kind of stuff. We had just had it banned. But John said, don't worry about it. We'll turn the Apple suits loose on you. And he was right. They got rid of Metro Media. They were very nice and let us out of our contract. And we signed with Apple, and all was good within a week or so. I mean, it went bing, bong, boom. And John really fulfilled all of his promises to us. He started buying equipment. We started talking about a tour that he'd like to get to go out and do right away. But then there was this slight little mention of a little detail called a green card. So we were also aware right from the beginning that this, there's some stumbling blocks to this idea. But that didn't stop me from going to the music store on 48th Street and buying one of every bass amp known to man. We all did. I mean, the pictures on the box set of the amount of equipment that we got together within 2 or 3 months preparing for the tour It was amazing. I've been told it was the loudest concert anybody of my friends had ever heard at the Garden. It was just an amazing mound of equipment. Very, very loud.
I mean, the stuff on the box set, I mean, some of the live performances you guys did, and there's actually stuff that's not there. You guys were on with John and Yoko on Mike Douglas. You were on with Dick Cavett, correct?
All of that stuff is out there on DVDs now. Yeah, I'm proud of that stuff. They were later, as you mentioned, those two, but later on they had the Jerry Lewis telethon also.
Right, which is on the box set, yeah.
Right. And that would have been nice if they would put a couple of things from Mike Douglas and Dick Cavett on there. But geez, they've got so much on there. How can you complain? I mean, you can't have everything. I mean, the people that did the Mike Douglas show had somebody bought the rights and just put out a new afternoon daytime revolution, whatever it's called. And I'm sure that was a stumbling block. They wouldn't have wanted to release that for this box set as well. I mean, we kind of probably killed their sales a little bit. So, yeah, all of those were a lot of fun because it's a good thing because the tour never got off the ground.
The Cavett stuff is on YouTube because I was just watching part of it a little while ago. One of the things I was looking for was to see if you guys got to play Woman is the Negro of the World on Cavett, and you did. The clip is there that Cavett explains to the audience, you know, that apparently there had been some difficulty with ABC. Can you talk about that?
Well, I didn't know about it till I got to the studio that day. I pulled into ABC and heard from our drummer, Rick Frank, there's a problem about doing that song. I could tell by the way Dick Cavett was acting that it was really bugging him that he had to do that. And I totally sympathized with him. That really sucked.
Mm-hmm.
But he had to. What can you do? So,
yeah.
Right. And I'm so glad we did.
When he introduces the song, you can tell he was not happy about it.
Oh, yeah. He was annoyed by the whole thing, that the suits at ABC had made him do that. And, you know, it wasn't a good thing for his and John's and Yoko's relationship either, that for him to have to do that and put them through extra nervousness that day. It was just really ridiculous. But now that looking back, I totally get it.
Yeah. Another one of the highlights from that period is the meeting with Chuck Berry on the Mike Douglas show.
Oh, I have to laugh every time somebody brings it up because it was so much fun for John. I was so much, you know, John just idolized Chuck. He was just always talked about him in the songs. We jammed on all the songs. My favorite story, if you haven't heard me, maybe I've told you this story before in our past interviews, but the day of the Mike Douglas show, Chuck, we were sitting in the green room waiting for Chuck to come on the scene, and he cleared the door and looked right over at John and pointed at him and says, "Where's my royalties?" Boy, you want to see a look of fear on somebody's face. I hadn't seen that look on John's face yet. He was just goofing on John, and you know, he walked across the room and extended himself. They hugged, and it was all history at that point. But it was quite a moment.
People have interpreted, because I guess Chuck Berry or Yoko came in when they were singing, and people have said that Chuck looked rather disapprovingly at Yoko. Did you see that, or did you think that?
Oh, I saw it big time. We all did. And what a thing to happen when you're playing live in front of 40 million people or whatever it was. I didn't take it as him looking badly at Yoko. I think it was just sheer shock.
Yeah.
I don't think he'd ever heard anything like that before. I sympathize because the first time I heard her break out like that, I was taken back pretty good too.
What did you learn about her music?
I loved her music. I loved the music that we backed up for her on Approximately Infinite Universe, specifically. Now, later on in the year of 72, one of the last things we did was actually finish it after the New Year's and into 73. Most of it was done in the fall of 72. I think Elephant's best work, frankly, is Approximately Infinite Universe. Don't get me wrong, I love what we did sometime in New York City. I love the performance, was a sheer pleasure. But By the time we got to Yoko's album and John got in the producer's chair, we had been honed into a machine. I mean, we're talking 2-3 weeks on Sometime in New York City, 2 or 3 weeks on the Apple album, our self-titled album, Elephant's Memory, that John produced. Then we had all the TV shows, and we had the live performance. But we had spent so many hours in the studio by the time Yoko's double album rolled around that we were just really in the groove. And we had it down. We would come in at 7 o'clock, you'd hear the song. Adam, our keyboard player, would sit with Yoko and kind of decipher what some of the chords that she was implying really would end up being, and that kind of guidance from Adam. And we all kind of got our heads together on the arrangements. I actually played trumpet on one of the tracks. I played trumpet. Our keyboard Adam played trumpet, sax, and we brought in another sax player for those recordings. So we did our own in-house horn section as well, which was pretty remarkable, I think. Might be the last time I ever played trumpet, because I didn't really get any calls to play trumpet after that. I got a lot of bass player calls after those records, but none for trumpet. That was my main instrument in high school, but I've gladly left it all behind.
There was also the appearance with Frank Zappa and the Mothers.
I'm not too fond of those recordings. The bass player seemed like he was lost half the time, in my opinion. So that's not something that would be my favorite thing from the box set, but I understand why it's there. I mean, it was all the time in New York City double album, so why not? I mean, it has to be there. That stuff, it's not terrible or anything. I just think the Elephants kind of outshine any of that stuff. That's my opinion.
Yeah. How about the Willowbrook concert? You guys were great at the one-to-one show.
It seems like the whole thing got better and better. I mean, it was like, the initial, from going way back, I don't know whether you recall, but ABC did a shoot that night as well.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely remember the cameras like on dollies going back and forth, and they definitely had ABC on it. So, and that was like a Wednesday night special on ABC, if I recall. But if you compare the quality of that all the way 53 years later, digital wasn't even hardly around in those days. So to have the whole thing transferred and remixed and, a few arrangement, little touches, changes, as we discussed earlier, I just couldn't be happier. The whole thing is better than ever.
So you've seen the film already?
And heard everything, Steve. The Simon Hilton has just been he flew over just for us to get together, and we got together for lunch and had a little private screening of everything. I've heard and seen everything, and I couldn't be happier.
Will it be complete? Will they include the song?
No.
They're not going to include the song?
No, I really don't think so.
How about Sisters, Oh Sisters? Because they left that off the box.
Sisters, that's a good question. I'm not sure about that. I have heard so many versions of it just recently. The other night at the Dolby screening, I heard a version that I had never heard before.
Nope.
Didn't have any slide guitar on it at all. It was just totally different to me, but I liked it. It was good.
Mm-hmm.
Not sure that's the one that will be on that film next year, though.
Right. And another thing about the live concert is they left Open the Box in there, which, I mean, that was a very controversial song, and Yoko even says so in introducing it, which, that's kind of interesting in light of what else happened, But,
yeah, I was just amazed that I didn't really recall a lot of that stuff,
Oh, really?
No, I hadn't. That wasn't one that I had zeroed in on it, but I really think the band did a great job on those Yoko jams. I mean, you have to really be on your game to really concentrate and get through some of that stuff. You have to really let yourself loose and go into jam mode or whatever you want to call it. But it's not easy, I tell you, when you're doing stuff that live. And I thought Elephants did a great job. I was proud of us. Nothing
Yeah,
like
you're absolutely right that her music required a lot of attention.
really. And that's why I'm so proud of the Approximately Infinite Universe, because there's so many styles involved.
Hmm.
You would have to bring in 4 other bands to cover all the stuff, style-wise, that we covered on that double album.
Mm.
I mean, it's just all over the place. We played Town Hall with Yoko, which is in New York. Town Hall in Manhattan. Yeah, it was a really big show. And I mean, that place holds like 6,000 people. That's not a small show. But she did the bag thing that night where
Okay.
she was in that part of her art, and that was pretty wild. Also, I got into a little scrape with Yoko that night. I was in the dressing room waiting to go on at Town Hall, and she brings in Approximately Infinite Universe t-shirts and asked the band to wear the shirts for the performance. I had no problem with that, except when they got around to giving me one, it was an extra small. I'm 6'1.5" and I weigh 200 pounds. So the shirt came up to about my navel. And luckily, my bass guitar covered that up. And I first said I wasn't going to wear it. And I sent that news back to her in her dressing room. And guess what? I wore it. I still laugh. First of all, that I had the balls to say that I wasn't going to wear it. And then, of course, I had to relent because I thought it over and went, well, my bass will cover it, so I'll go for it.
Let me ask, first of all, how John was like generally.
Yeah, you asked me earlier what he was like to work with. I couldn't be happier as a studio musician. I mean, that's what I did for a living. I got up in the morning and I'd do a T1 of cigarettes commercial, T1 of smalls. For the afternoon, I'd be, if I was lucky, doing a Roto-Rooter commercial. And it was such a thrill to go to the record plant that night and actually, hey, tonight I'm playing with John Lennon. And he was a prince, man. He never got on your case about anything you played. He always gave us a lot of freedom. And as a studio musician, that's all you can ask for. I mean, he was just so great. I've heard Tony Levin say this too. He just never got on your case. He gave you the freedom to play what you thought was appropriate for the record. As a player, you want to play the right thing for the record, the song. You play the song. You don't show off. You know, John knew that right from the get-go that I didn't play a million notes, that I played a very simple rock R&B style. And he was happy with that. I couldn't be happier with him. I was able to introduce all my parts, and I don't think he ever came to me once to change anything. It was just a perfect marriage to me. I mean, as a bass player and an artist, because that's all you can ask for.
How about Yoko?
Same thing, a lot of freedom. John was in the producer's chair for that, so that helped too. Just a smooth ride. I can't say, I mean, I don't think we would have been able to turn out the kind of quality recordings that we did on Yoko's album if it, as I said, by that time, we really had it down. We were a smooth, mean machine.
Well, you know, the box set is absolutely wonderful. I want to thank you for talking all about it. Is there anything you want to say to maybe get a message out that you want to say personally to everybody?
Oh, I don't think we should get too hung about the fact that there's a missing song. I mean, all that stuff is on all the compilations that have been out up till now.
And they aren't going away.
By that, you know, I mean, I'm not going to get real out there about it because I'm so pleased and happy and indebted to Sean for spending all the time that he spent on this, and Simon Hilton, that, you know, I'm just thankful, you know, that this is out and it's way more than I expected. I never expected half the stuff that they've included with this. It's just way over the top. Just the book alone, I mean, 3 days of interviews just to get some of that stuff in there. I mean, pictures of Bob Gruen that I've never seen before of us in the studio. I could just go on and on. I'm just very, very happy with it.
Okay. Well, thank you again. You know, one more question actually. You said are you basically retired now, or are you playing at all?
Oh, I still play. I'm just not touring anymore. The COVID thing did it for me. I was doing 15, 20 students a week at that point, and I just had to set it aside and have not gone back. So I'm not teaching, and I'm not really playing any tours right now. It's just too taxing at my age. But I still do a few recordings once in a while, and I play out a couple of times a month still here locally in New Jersey, and still having a lot of fun. Yoko bought us a house in Columbia, New Jersey, which is overlooking the Delaware Water Gap.
Okay.
It's
I
just
lived.
here. We love it. Yoko bought this house for us in '94, I think it was. And we've been here ever since. Don't have any intention to move, and we love it. Thank you, Yoko.
How very cool. I assume you haven't had any contact with her recently, or have you?
The last time would have been when the Imagine record was out.
Okay.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. The last time I saw her was at the premiere for the Lennon NYC movie on Channel 13.
Okay.
That's the
Okay.
last time I saw her in New York. And I think she's done as far as coming out for appearances. So,
Well, yeah, and Sean moved. She's moved out of New York City. She's not in New York.
she's up at their farm in upstate New York now.
Right. Right.
And I always ask Sean, and he always says she's doing well. You know,
That's good.
yeah, I'm glad to hear that. You know, she's really into her garden, apparently.
Good for her.
I just love her. She's always been number one in my book, because even when we worked back with her back in '72 and '73, she would send flowers to the wives when she would keep us in the studio for hours and days. Very aware of the wives and the girlfriends, and had a limo pick up our wives and take them to Bloomingdale's shopping, which is a phenomenal store in New York City.
Right.
I mean, above and beyond the call, she didn't have to do any of that stuff. Very considerate, just a loving person.
That's very nice. Anyway, Gary, thank you very much for taking the time and talking. It was great seeing you again, and great talking to you. And we'll be really happy to see the movie. Do you know when the movie will be out?
That's something I can't help you on. I wish it would be sooner, really, after seeing it. I'm just so imagined. It's just so many things about the film, the one-to-one film that's going to be coming out, is so much split screen stuff. I mean, just all the modern day movie techniques. I think it's just going to blow everybody away. It's just phenomenal.
Okay.
It was great
to talk to you too, and everybody is looking forward to that concert film.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
And it'll be great to see that when it comes out. So anyway, Gary, you take care, and yeah, I hope we get a chance to talk again soon.
I hope so too, Steve. Thank you.
Been a pleasure. I'm going to stop the recording first. Here's a little bit of Beatles news. If you ordered the John Lennon Yoko Ono Power to the People box set from Walmart and then had it canceled because of a pricing error, you may have been one of the many who got a free copy of the box set this week. Walmart initially priced the set at around $81, far below the $239.88 price now at the official John Lennon U.S. store. As we're recording this, copies are still arriving to customers. They've been sending out notifications in advance to those receiving shipments, so if you haven't received your set already, you might want to call their customer service line or write to CEO Doug McMillan at Doug.McMillan, that's MILLON, at walmart.com. We were the first to report on our Substack that the Alan G. Parker John Lennon movie Borrowed Time, Lennon's Last Decade would finally be available in the U.S. on December 8th. Then we reported subsequently that it would premiere on that date in New York City at 8 p.m. at the AMC Lincoln Square Theater, 1998 Broadway in New York City. The premiere includes a Q&A with Mr. Parker. The screening is listed on Eventbrite, and a few tickets remain as of the time of this recording. Here's our review of the John Lennon Yoko Ono Power to the People box set. We all know the story. Despite a lot of difficulty, John Lennon and Yoko Ono's Power to the People box set is finally, and let's underline that word finally, out
after having been in the works for many years. Yes, it's not complete. An important song was left off, but as Gary Van Scyoc said in our interview here, he's glad he's around to see it, and I'm glad that it's out as well. Many albums have run into problems from record companies over the years, and one solution that they could have done here was put the song in the most expensive version that only fans would certainly buy. But what has been released here is absolutely wonderful, and it's well worth springing for the smaller configurations, or if you can afford it, the big set of 6 CDs and 3 Blu-rays, all without the infamous song. It has a ton of live material highlighted by 31 live tracks from the 1-to-1 concert, but also including studio live and home jams and wonderful reimaginings of Sometime in New York City songs. Mixed and engineered by Paul Hicks and Sam Gannon and mastered by Alex Wharton at Abbey Road Studios. Much of it unreleased, plus a huge book. As with previous Lennon releases, this one also has an artistic look about it, starting with the lenticular cover of John and Yoko on the front. The music from the songs to the playing of Elephant's Memory Band is excellent. This period, especially the Sometime in New York City period, has been criticized over the years, but this set goes a long way to redeeming that. It definitely belongs in your collection in one form or another. And we have a little bit of Beatles chart news. In the UK, on the official charts.com album chart, the John and Yoko box set debuted at number 72 on the chart, dated October 17th, but it only lasted a week. On that chart also, the Beatles 67 to 70 album was number 60. The following week it had dropped down to number 69. On the Billboard 200 album chart, the week of the 25th, Abbey Road was number 144.
A late-breaking piece of news. We just got into the Beatles News Briefs headquarters. The John Lennon and Yoko Ono documentary, 1-to-1 John and Yoko, will premiere November 14th to stream on HBO Max.
Thanks very much for listening to our podcast today. If you enjoyed our program, we'd really appreciate a positive review at the place where you get your podcasts. Apple and Google love positive reviews, and it really helps us. If you don't already, please subscribe to our show so you'll get our newest shows right away. And if you have any suggestions for the show, please write to us at BeatlesExaminer@gmail.com or catch us online on Facebook, Twitter, and Blue Sky. And please tell your friends about us. We appreciate you all for listening. Now here again is Steve Marinucci.
Well, that's it for today. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed what you heard. And be sure to be with us next time. Until then, this is Steve Marinucci saying,
Be seeing you.